They came from another country and they settled here. And we have found underground a lot of evidence like this. This was a house. This was a house that was standing here around the year 900, something like that. And what we have left of the building, because most of the building is now gone, we just have the lowest part. But we can see the size of the house and the shape, and we see the floor inside the building. And in the center of the floor is a fireplace that was used for heating and cooking, and also for light as well. And these types of buildings, we call them halls. They were a bit peculiar. Turn around. Look in that direction. Turn around. So, all around us here, we have a photograph. Goes all around this exhibition hall. It is Reykjavik. Again, it is Reykjavik around the year 900. And you can see several buildings because the one behind you there was very similar to this one over here. These houses are not stone houses or brick or wood. They are made from it's a material called turf, which is used in the walls and also on the roof. And these turf houses, this is some of the first houses in Iceland and the first houses in Reykjavik as well. This is during the Viking Age, so these people are technically Vikings, and they are the first people in this country. And these buildings, these are of course necessary. They are using the best material around because there was very little woodland in Iceland at that time, and still is, there's very little woods here. So this is the material that they are using. And if you come this way, over here, what we are seeing here was found here underground. And if you look up, you will see we are underneath the sidewalk and the street. The street is over here, and this is the sidewalk. So we dug down to find this about just over 2 meters. And we're standing where the front door was. The front door of this building is just about here. People came into the building here. Now this house and all of these houses, they belong to a specific culture. These are all farms. These are all farmhouses. Reykjavik was a farm for a very long time. It was a farm from the start, from around just before the year 900, up until maybe 1740, 1750. So it's about 800 years where Reykjavik is just a farm. It started as a very big farm with maybe 80 to 100 people living in maybe 10 or 15 houses, but then it would grow smaller over time. Now what they were farming here, it's a bit difficult with farming in Iceland. There's basically only one type of farming that you could do. The farms were all about. They were about animals. Sheep and cows and horses and goats and pigs and chickens. But none of these animals existed in Iceland. They had to be brought over this way. And all of these people and all of their animals first came here on ships are just around the maybe 870 to 900. And this is what farming was all about in Iceland. And this is how the life in Iceland was basically like. There were a few other things. Come over to this. Come here. And turn around. There were a could grow, but it was very difficult. They could not grow and did not grow vegetables until the 1700s. You can't grow fruit, not outside. You can do it inside, but not outside. And even growing things like very simple things like grain was also quite difficult because there are only two types of grain that will actually grow in this country. They were growing a little bit of barley. They were growing barley, but it was not something that they would be using as a major food. You could make bread from barley, which they did. You can also make beer. It's an important thing to have, but basically it is the animals that are keeping the people alive, and the animals which constitute what they were eating for about 800 years. So mainly they're eating meat. They're also eating fish because they were fishing all of the time. But you can't fish all year round. You can only fish in very specific times of the year. Usually they would only fish in the winter because these are farmers. Farmers are very busy in the summer, so they couldn't go fishing, so they would fish in the winter. And the third type of food, which was very important to them, came from the animals as well. It was dairy products, things that were made from milk. Like cheese, like butter, and like skyr. Has anybody tried skyr? Yeah, skyr. You eat it like yogurt almost.
Yeah.
It's very popular in Iceland, and it's been very popular in Iceland for over 1,000 years. But Reykjavik would not, although it was a farm for a very long time, it wouldn't remain that forever. So come this way. It's still a farm, but fishing and things from the sea become more and more important. Because the sea is close. From where we are standing now, the sea was only about 70 meters. So it's a very close thing, and there was a lot of things going on. But as I said, mostly during the winter, they were fishing for themselves, but also they were fishing to export to other countries. It is a bit difficult to export fish if you can't freeze it or anything like that. So what they would do with fish before exporting it, they would dry it out like that. It's called stockfish in English. In Iceland, this type of fish is called harðfiskur, which means hard fish. And in this state, you can eat it, and it will keep for a very long time, for years, in fact. It won't spoil because it's just dried out fish. Another type of fish that they were hunting for export, these things here, on top of the fish there, but these are the tools used for hunting a fish, and there's a fish hook there, but it is very big. What type of fish do you know? How many kilograms? The fish? Oh, about a ton, maybe. So, what fish weighs a ton when you eat a giant fish? You know? It's for shark. No. There's a lot of shark around. These sharks, they're very big. They can be maybe 7 meters, a ton in weight. So they are very, very large, and they were not hunted in another story. They were hunted for a specific thing. They were hunted for their liver. Like whale. Whale hunting was like that. You only use very small part of the animal. The liver was important because the liver of the shark was used for. Now the oil was an export item. You could sell it abroad because this type of oil, this type of fish oil, was used in a lot of countries in Europe for street lights, lighting streets. In Copenhagen, London, Berlin, they had fish oil because it's a very slow burning oil, and you could get a lot of it, especially from countries like Iceland. But Reykjavik would not remain, it would not remain a fishing or farming sort of farm for eternity. Come here. Around the mid-1700s, the Reykjavik farm is on this model. It's over here. This here. these buildings here. This is the farm, and it is a turf building. But around created these buildings. This was not a town basically, but what they were doing, these were factories. They were used for weaving and spinning wool, and it was another export item that they were trying out. So this is what how Reykjavik started as a very, very small village, maybe 300 or 400 people living here, but it was sort of a very small factory village, but with a church. But from this point on, Reykjavik would slowly grow into a larger town. So this is about 100 years later, maybe around 1860, 1870, and Reykjavik has become a town of maybe a few thousand people. Wooden buildings mostly. This little water here there's a small lake just across the street. We call it the pond, and Reykjavik was it was a very sort of tight little town. They were still living from the ocean. A lot fishing was the main sort of employment here, but also there were things like churches, and there were schools here in Reykjavik. Reykjavik had in fact become the largest town in Iceland and also its capital. No running water, however, in these buildings, so there were wells at various places, and people like that were called water bearers, and they would carry water from the wells to all of the houses. So, as I said, Reykjavik is a small but thriving village of a few thousand people, and then it would continue to grow from that point on. Let's come up. So this is a little bit later. This is 1906. The street, this is just a single street in Reykjavik. By that time, it had grown even more. There were about maybe 10 or 11,000 people living in Reykjavik. But this street here is the same street that you were on outside. And we are now, all of us, standing about, see, here. We're standing here. No, here. So that's where we are. And some of these buildings are still around, like this one, for instance, is outside. It's a hotel today. The little garden across the street is now a small square. The big White House over there it does not exist anymore, it was a hotel. The biggest hotel in Iceland. It was called the Hotel Iceland. It had room for, I think, maybe 60 guests. This over here is the cinema, the first cinema in Iceland, which was established in 1906 as well. And so it's the building there at the end between the yellow one is also still out there. This street here, this is the first street in Reykjavik. It is called Aðalstræti. It means over there, Aðalstræti. It means main street. Because it is the main street. Singing, you hear it. Singing comes from this building over there with the flagpole. It is the Salvation Army also stood there. And you can hear sort of various things. Also, if you look at these things, you see people and animals and things walking around, and you can hear them speak, both in Icelandic and English. But as I said, Reykjavik is still growing at this point. It would continue to grow over the dock of the inhabited, because Reykjavik was still making its living mostly from the sea and things connected to the sea. Not simply for fishing, but also it has become a sort of major trading port in Iceland, and a lot of trading ships were coming. This would change a lot in the next decade. In 1940, during World War II. World War II had only been going for about 6 months when Iceland was occupied. by British forces, and the Reykjavik area became sort of the center of the occupation. The occupation of Iceland, it was very important for the war, because at Europe supplies and weapons and all kinds of things, and they needed to have a safe port for all of these ships that were going back and forth. Also, they needed to be able to fly across the Atlantic, and almost no aircraft could fly in a single in one take, so they would have to land somewhere to refuel, and Iceland was again considered a good place for that. What the occupying forces did, they started a large program of constructing roads, constructing this. This is a model of Reykjavik Airport, which is still in use. And all of these constructions required a lot of people, a lot of labor, which the Icelanders supplied. So in a very short time, thousands of people started moving into to get work, because the British forces, they paid well for labor. So we had, these are mostly young people coming into Reykjavik from smaller towns and farms. And when these young people had established themselves, and when they had their own families, the population of Reykjavik exploded, mostly with, again, young people. In 1960, when Reykjavik first became a city, about half of the population was under 15. So it was a city of children. And over there, behind you, these facilities are the different sections or areas of Reykjavik as they are being built. Reykjavik is, in fact, divided into 11 different areas. You can see them here on this map. A piece of land just by the ocean, but then it is expanded. Come down here. What we have here, this little black house over here, which is a part of our exhibition, is the oldest standing house in Reykjavik. It's about 250 years old. Made from wood, which is surprising that it lasted this long. And it was a part of the very first iteration of Reykjavik as a village, the one that we saw down in the basement, the factory houses. This was one of the factory houses. But for these 250 years, a lot of people have lived here, and a lot of things have happened. It's been a bar, and it's been a hairdressers and a grocery store, and all kinds of people have lived here. What we put inside is those that the two persons or people that were the longest in the building. Both of them for just under 50 years. But first of all, come. This is a small grocery store. It was a grocery store for between 1927 till 1985, so almost 50 years. These types of grocery stores were the norm in this time. We're seeing it here around 1955, something like this. And it was owned by a pair of men, and the store was named after them. That's the name of the store. These were the two men who owned this store. And they didn't just own this one, they owned 11 others all over Reykjavik, although Reykjavik was not large, but as the Reykjavik grew, they grew as well. They had more and more stores all over the place. We're in fact probably the richest men in Reykjavik because of these small stores. The other part of the house is dedicated to another person a bit earlier, around 1800, something like this. He lived here around 1800. He was the Bishop of Iceland, a very important figure. And sort of the leader of the Icelandic church. And he and his wife, they lived here for just over 40 years or something like that. And we're seeing his study here. And, a lot of letters. People during this time period, if they could write letters, and the writing of letters was a very important thing. It was communication, of course, and I mean, they have to handwrite this, but people would not be writing maybe a letter a week or anything like that. They would probably be writing every single day, because then they, write the letter and then send it into the post, and it might take a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks for it to get to its destination, but they would write 2 or 3 letters a day and send them all, and then the next day and the next day. So they were sending and they were receiving as well. So it was delayed, but it was almost constant communication, especially between important men like the bishop and maybe other churches all around Iceland, or sending them abroad. So this is writing was going on almost continuously all of the time. And the bishop, in fact, he wrote a lot of his letters, but he also had a scribe, a man who was employed by him just to write. He would just say what, he would just dictate the letter and they would write, because this was going on almost continuously all year round. So even though it took a long time for a letter to reach its destination, it was continuous in this manner. They could almost keep up a conversation. Okay, so now, as I said, you can wander freely through the exhibition space now. Of course, for those of you who left their jackets behind you on display, we also have for the children 2 places where they can play. One is at the very beginning of the exhibition, and the other is just in the next room. There are a few toys there that they can play with as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.